Aratatuma's life has always been defined by pain, servitude, and a gigantic level of bad luck. Adopted by an abusive family and treated like a servant, the 11-year-old boy found his only refuge in the love of his older brother Ryotuma, basically the only decent human being in that house. While Arata was constantly on the receiving end of his adoptive mother's rage, the kind of villain that makes even Cinderella's stepmother look like a life coach, Ryo acted as his shield, protecting him and encouraging his biggest dream to become a demon hunter so they could one day escape, like a road trip, but with trauma and monsters. And just when fate finally seemed to smile at Arata like winning the lottery, but better, he was chosen by a golden rank orb with a water attribute, an item of extreme rarity and immense power. But of course, his happiness lasted about as long as a cheap phone battery. His adoptive father, driven by pure greed and absolutely zero brain cells working, stole the artifact and sold it to the powerful Goto group for a fortune. A classic family betrayal arc, just without redemption and with way more rage. Seriously, where's the side character who shows up just to beat this guy up when you need one? 6 years later, Arata and Ryo watch on TV the rise of Takedo Goto, a famous hunter who's basically a celebrity, using the very orb that rightfully belonged to Arata. Consumed by anger, Ryo decides it's time to confront the imposter. The brothers head to the Deep Blue Guild headquarters, expecting justice, but instead they get the premium betrayal package. Takedo, proving that celebrity charisma doesn't equal character, traps them inside a room with an active demonic rift. Basically, good luck surviving or not. Faced with danger, tragedy strikes again. In one final act of heroism, Ryo saves Arata, only to be struck directly by a mysterious black sphere emerging from the rift. What follows is pure nightmare fuel. Arata watches helplessly as his brother's body is consumed by a dark aura. Even on the verge of transformation, Ryo tries to comfort him before losing his humanity and turning into a grotesque demon. At that moment, Arata realizes the truth. The real monsters aren't just demons, but people like Goto, who destroy lives without a second thought. At the peak of his despair, in full main character awakening moment fashion, a new black orb appears before him. And this time, Arata doesn't hesitate. By claiming it, he receives the blessing of the demonic realm, gaining soot-based abilities and access to a mysterious system that labels him as an executor. Yes, he now has an RPG-style interface, because apparently, suffering unlocks DLC. But there's no time for a tutorial. While his brother, now transformed, hesitates and flees instead of attacking, meaning something of him is still there, a new threat emerges, a hybrid beast born from the rift. Wounded, cornered, and seconds away from becoming a statistic, Arata awakens. A surge of dark power erupts from his body, turning the surrounding soot into deadly blades that instantly destroy the creature. A true end-of-episode plot twist moment. The system announces his evolution to level 3, but his body just goes, "Cool, I'm done," and he collapses unconscious. Shortly after, Takedo Goto returns to the scene expecting easy results. Instead, he finds nothing but destruction, and traces of a power he never imagined those weaklings could possess. And just like that, the game has changed. Arata is no longer the victim of the story. He's the beginning of the problem. Unless, the next scene shows Arata dreaming about his big bro, until he jolts awake. Still kind of out of it, he remembers what happened and gets up to go look for his brother. But he's interrupted by the scream of a beautiful green-haired nurse. She explains they found him passed out in the street, with injuries caused by demons. "Where am I?" the boy asks, and she says it's a medical center for executors. Lost in thought, she also advises him that newbies should join a guild. "Sorry," the boy says, getting up in a hurry, telling her he needs to go. And once again she tells him to rest. With the patience of an ant, Arata walks up to the door and overhears a conversation. A demon is on the loose near Goto's group, and some unknown executor is chasing the creature around the rifts. Arata goes on alert, thinking that if that's true he has to do something before dealing with guilds. The nurse comes back, asking if he remembered to claim the reward, but realizes the boy already ran off. Thinking he's basically the Flash, Arata tears through the streets and decides to search every demon rift. Then a loud alert echoes through the streets saying a rift burst open in the Asagiri area. When he gets there, he realizes the rift is bronze difficulty, and the association has already put up a protective barrier. "My big bro might be in there. Can I even handle this?" The kid wonders as he steps into the rift. The moment he crosses the portal, Arata finds himself in a desert, and he immediately gets the mission to take down the boss. He figures the boss has to be the strongest one and that there'll be other creatures nearby, when suddenly a level 3 giant wolf appears right in front of him. Excited for his first fight, Arata picks the skill Suit's Shadow Blade. To his surprise, it works, letting him block the creature's bite. The impact sends him flying back, and he's shocked by how strong that monster is. Remembering his training, the boy charges in, determined, landing a series of slashes that cut straight through the wolf. The system notifies him that he's leveled up to 5, but before he can even celebrate, a whole bunch of beasts pop up around him, ready to attack. Aramsi can't believe there are so many, especially in a low-level rift. With no other choice, he decides to fight them, thinking he'll use the same skill he used against the giant rat. The wolves rush him, but the kid realizes he doesn't know how to activate the skill. Then the beasts start tearing him apart until a fireball shoots toward him, burning them all up. "That skill, what was that?" asks a mysterious guy. Arata tries to figure out what just happened. "Was that unknown executor you?" the redhead says, raising his fists, ready to fight. Arata recognizes him, Leo Kuji, a gold-ranked fire attribute executor and a member of the Sheen Guild, along with his silver-level teammates, one of the 5 emperors, the boy thinks, as a pack of demons closes in on the trio who hadn't even noticed. Annoyed, the young man just raises his hand and activates his divine skill, Ragnarok. A massive hellish blast erupts behind him, roasting every monster in a brutal, agonizing instant. Harada freezes when he sees that kind of power. That many. Yeah, something's definitely off, the redhead says as he walks closer. So, what skill is that, he asks, pointing at the black sword. Only then does the kid realize his abilities don't look like any of the 5 known attributes. Leo steps in even closer. Curious why Arata's out there alone. Feeling like he's in an episode of Scooby-Doo, the kid decides to get out of there ASAP. Watching him back away, the redhead thinks about how an orb resonates with a person's desire in nature. But that black sword, hold it right there, kid, you're an irregular, he says. Nervous, Arata stutters, saying he's in a hurry. Leo clenches his fists. There's an order to capture you, he says, moving in. The kid blocks the punch on instinct with his sword. What is this psycho doing? The MC thinks, as the soot reacts to the fire, forcing Leo to step back. Handle the demons in the area, Leo orders his subordinates, who are worried everything's about to turn into charcoal. The fire guy unleashes a barrage of flaming attacks, forcing Arata to dive for cover. Just surrender, or you'll turn to ash, kid, he keeps going. I need to find my brother, Arata thinks, dodging another wave of fire that vaporizes half the rock behind him. You can't run or hide from my flames, kid. Desperate for any idea, Arata opens his status window, looking for something useful. The Red Ranger watches him waving his hands around, and mocks him for thinking he can fight. He says it's pointless, and launches a hellish blast. The MC raises a black cloud, dispersing the heat around him. Ash doesn't burn twice, he yells at the executor, who replies that apparently he's not just some scared gray chicken after all. But this right here? This is the end for you, kid, he says, powering up the fire in his fists, ready to strike. My brother's waiting for me. I'm not giving up that easily, Arata answers, gripping his black blade. That line throws Leo off for a second, just long enough for Arata to close the distance. What happened to your brother? Leo asks, feeling the impact as they clash. Caught off guard by the question, the MC backs up, saying he has to go. Then Leo says, if you want to protect someone, level up no matter what. Because the way you are right now, kid, you really will turn to ash. Arata feels grateful for that, and runs off toward his brother. Soon after, Leo's teammates return, saying they cleared all the demons in the area, wondering where the kid went. Leo says, that brat was just someone determined. They stare at him. Determined? He almost got turned into barbecue, and then they get ordered to move out and take down the boss. The scene cuts to the Deep Blue Guild, where someone sighs after hearing the alarm for a new demonic rift. The woman in the black dress asks if Ichika can take the job, and she immediately accepts her duty. The scene cuts again, showing Arata in the middle of a crowd searching for demonic rifts. We found out he'd been kicked out of the last raid because Leo ended it. The kid looks at an announcement from the association and mutters that if a capture order's been issued, he can't count on the guilds. Suddenly, a piercing alarm echoes through the streets. A dimensional breach has been detected. Citizens are told to evacuate until the executors arrive. Panic spreads, but Arata runs the other way, heading straight toward the danger. There it is, he says when he spots the Cassendo Rift, bronze rank. Thinking his brother might be in there, a man stops him, warning that the area is off limits. You an executor? The guy asks, noticing the kid doesn't have an emblem. Just another normal, pathetic executor who can't even beat monsters properly. He says they've got orders to keep anyone out until the VIP shows up. VIP? I need to get in, Arata protests. Like I care. Get lost, kid, the guy snarls, while his friend forms ice spikes and hurls them at Arata, who barely dodges. I'm in a hurry, Bonnie and Clyde. But if that's how you want to do this, the MC says, drawing his blade and charging in. Come on then, freak, the hunter taunts, activating a mud trap that locks Arata in place. Arata sinks deeper and deeper while he hears the guy declare, this is the end for you, kid, trash freelancer. Stop right there, a female voice shouts. Ichika Aoi appears and immediately helps the MC with her water abilities, freeing him. She doesn't get why executors are fighting each other, and quickly figures they must be using the rift for their own benefit. The two men mock her for being just her guild support, while the chubby one fires ice spikes at her. Caught off guard, she raises a water barrier that reflects the attacks, complaining about having to fight. Then she turns to the kid and tells him to fight while she buffs him. Arata hesitates for a second, surprised, but agrees. Let's go, she says, already casting her enchantment. Feeling the difference in his body, the MC rushes forward at insane speed, freaking the two idiots out. In the blink of an eye, he lands clean, precise strikes with his dark blade and takes them down. Confused by his own agility, he checks his status and realizes how huge the boost to his stats is. Did you hurt them? Ichika asks as she walks up, and Arata explains he used the blunt side of the blade. These guys are from my guild, she sighs. The same guild as that blonde bastard, Arata thinks. After helping each other out, the two finally introduce themselves. Ichika starts asking what guild he's from, when the duo gets up and bolts, saying they need to report everything to Lord Godo. Hearing that name, the MC feels his anger rise. The girl with the blue ribbon says she'll report what happened to the association later, but first they need to clear that rift. She says backup should be on the way, but the two of them can handle it alone, since she has authorization from Master Leo. Arata realizes her buffs are seriously effective, which makes him feel confident getting hyped for his first team mission. "Just stay close to me, okay?" she adds, and Arata quickly agrees as they both run toward the rift. The system announces the start of the Kisendo Rift conquest, showing a creepy, abandoned-looking cave. The girl explains that rifts are parallel dimensions, and there's no way to predict what they'll find inside, telling Arata to be careful. He focuses on finding his brother, grateful for the executor's help and determined to do his best. Cutting into his thoughts, a grotesque goblin appears in front of him. The MC says that one's basically tutorial level, poor thing, it won't be any danger, and casually takes its head off. Confident, he says he can handle this, until a whole horde shows up, packed with random weapons. "Is this a clearance sale or what?" he mutters, while the girl prepares an enchantment that boosts his stats. "Attack," she orders, and Arata charges in, wiping out several goblins at once. "With me here, this is going to be a walk in the park," she says proudly. Arata thanks her for the buffs and compliments her, which makes her even more smug. The kid stiffer than a bugged NPC spots a shadow moving in, and it attacks the girl from behind. Instinctively, a barrier forms to protect her, and at the same time the goblin gets taken out without mercy. Surprised by his own reflexes, he admires how she can make calls in a split second, and how she can trigger multiple skills even as a support. He comments that he needs to level up to get as strong as her, which catches her interest. "Then let's go," she says, pointing at the enemies around them. Our MC freaks out when he realizes how many there are, while Ichika gets excited and throws another buff on him, pushing him to take them all on. He rushes forward quickly, wiping out the horde in seconds. Once his win is confirmed, the system tells him he hit level 10 and unlocked a new skill. Suddenly, an even bigger group of goblins shows up, cutting off any escape route. Ichika notices the enemy count basically doubled, and simple attacks won't cut it anymore. Arata checks out his new technique and realizes it's made for long-range attacks and crowd control. He focuses his energy and fires off a black wave that rips through the monsters, punching straight through their bodies. "Insane," the girl says, impressed by how much damage our boy can dish out. They decide to push forward, but soon they feel this massive presence coming from deep down the corridor. "The boss has to be that way," she says, moving carefully. At the end of the path, they find an armed figure sitting on a makeshift throne. The huge ogre wakes up when it notices the intruders, and lets out a roar. Arata tries to stay calm while the ogre mutters some weird guttural sounds. Then its spear shoots lightning everywhere, flooding the whole cave. At the same time, Ichika steps in and raises a water barrier, but the attack is so strong the shield shatters, blasting her back, and she can't help wondering if the boss is really just bronze rank. Without even pausing, the ogre fires another electric attack. The girl takes the lead and yells for Arata to use the opening, even while he's worried about her. He hesitates for a second, then moves in, circling around the monster. At the perfect moment, he uses his long-range skill and successfully destroys the spear, knocking it out of the ogre's hand. Furious, the thing reacts and hurls the broken shaft straight at him. Arata panics as it pierces his chest, dealing a fatal wound. Ichika rushes over and raises her shield, trying to heal him with recovery magic. The water eases his injuries, and the boy growls in pain, fighting to stay conscious. "This is just emergency treatment," she warns as the massive ogre charges at full speed. They freak out when they see it clench its fists and start pounding the barrier over and over without stopping. "We have to stop it," Ichika says, and Arata spots a gap in the monster's armor. Using the distraction from the non-stop blows, he decides to run, but the boss notices and tries to stop him. As he closes in, our MC focuses a heavy hit on the ogre's leg, tearing a chunk out of it and making it freeze for a moment. Seeing the opening, he packs all the soot into his shadowy blade while the girl buffs his stats, yelling at him to go all out. Arata, confident now, charges the giant with everything he's got, leaping up at the ogre. With all his strength, he brings the blade down right on the monster's head, ending the fight instantly. A system notification confirms the battle's over, and he's leveled up to 13. The pretty girl runs over, congratulates our hero, and they share an excited high five. They decide to get out fast, since the rift is starting to close. Back in the city, Arata looks over the mission results, bummed that he still didn't find his brother. The exhaustion hits him, and he collapses. Worried, the ribbon girl decides to take him with her, and he agrees without arguing. They arrive at the Deep Blue Guild building. Ichika hands him a set of clean clothes and tells him to wait while she goes to report everything to her master. Time passes, and Arata, finally not smelling like soot, decides to look around. Suddenly, a green-haired woman rushes by and trips, face-planting right in front of him. The boy instinctively catches her in his arms. He apologizes, staring into the woman's beautiful green eyes as she studies him closely. Embarrassed, he quickly pulls himself together and bolts out of there. Only then does it hit him. That was probably the Deep Blue Guild master. The woman, confused, wonders who the boy was. Back in her office, she meets with Ichika and thanks her for the good work. Noticing something's up, the master watches as the girl starts dumping info non-stop about the mission. After she calms down, Ichika explains that the blonde guy was basically hogging the demon rift. The leader comments that something needs to be done about Goto, while also wondering about the mysterious boy she ran into. The scene cuts to Arata walking through the city, thinking about what a mess it was to crash into the guildmaster like that. Then he sees a huge fire explode out in the streets. An executor throws up a barrier to protect a child. Moved, our MC runs straight toward the inferno. A two-headed demon dog blasts flames at the two of them. Overwhelmed, the man realizes his shield is about to give out. Just as he accepts he's done for, a black cloud stuns the monster, and a powerful strike slams into the creature. Giving off a sinister aura, the man panics at that kind of power. Controlling the soot around him, the boy summons his shadow blade and steps in between the demonic beast and the two people. Seeing its enemy, the monster charges, but Arata doesn't move an inch. At the perfect moment, he lands a clean, precise strike, slicing the creature in half and ending the fight. Far away, a mysterious man watches everything with real interest. At the headquarters of Japan's Executors Association, someone announces the start of the Council of the Five Heavens. They introduce the country's 5 golden executors: Jinosuke Dogami, from the Seiwa Guild, our fireboy Leo, Reizaki, from Deep Blue, the mysterious man Takuto Nagihara, from the Sukyu Guild, and the bored-looking Shion Inamori, from the Keisen Guild. The big guy asks everyone about the rise in abnormal rifts in the region. Leo says low-level rifts have been spitting out an unusual number of monsters. Ray adds that bosses higher ranked than expected have been showing up. The redhead says that'll just make the executors stronger, while the young guy with earrings mocks his optimism. Annoyed, he yells at the guy, who stays totally unfazed. The greenish-haired girl keeps going, asking how often these irregularities are happening. They explain that a dimensional shift is going on, but the cause is still unknown. The leader asks them to report any new info. Moving the meeting along, he brings up the next topic. An irregular has been spotted. Someone's been moving between rifts without authorization, and they don't know why he never registered. The woman brings up our boy, saying he's suspicious because he has weird abilities. From the description, the femboy recognizes him right away from his last adventure. Rai figures that if his ability is different, the kid might think he doesn't belong to any guild. Takuto cuts in. He could be on the demon side, and everyone immediately tenses up. Leo tries to ease things, saying he ran into the kid before and doesn't believe that. He says the guy seemed like someone with a lot of passion. The young executor lets out a laugh and says it was just a joke, which pisses Leo off, though it also makes him a little suspicious. Dogami shuts it down, saying capturing the kid is optional for now, since there isn't enough evidence. Just keep an eye on him. In that case, if he's really that important, he'll show up again, says the lady who'd been quiet until then. She stands up and starts to leave, saying she's got something more urgent to deal with, when something catches her attention. A camera had been watching the meeting the whole time. The recording with all that info was being watched by the hunter Godo, chilling in his office. An irregular, even the Five Heavens think he's a problem, says the rich kid in his little monologue. If I capture this guy, my influence in the association is gonna skyrocket. Then he goes over what he knows. The boy had soot-based abilities, and the other one probably turned into a demon corpse. If that's the case, I know exactly where he's going. Guess I'll take care of this annoying little issue, he says, heading out. The scene cuts to a crowd panicking because a new rift has appeared. Our MC runs toward the breach when someone suddenly stops him. When he recognizes the blonde guy, he shouts his name, furious. Figured you'd be here, he says, mocking him for still being alive. Arata snaps back, telling him not to get in his way. Goto starts joking about the state of Arata's brother. Now some horrible creature. I'm gonna finish that filthy thing, he says, gathering power in his hand. Overflowing with rage, the boy roars, don't mess with me, and throws out a massive strike. Goto watches the soot ability, confirming it's a brand new attribute. Then he cuts the attack apart like it's nothing. Pissed at his mistake, our MC charges in, gripping his blade. Way too slow, Goto taunts, striking a Statue of Liberty pose as he summons an ice dragon. Our hero blocks the attack, all calm and gentle, then decides to chill on the sidewalk for a second. The little blonde XXXTentacion lookalike laughs at him, clowning him for not being able to use anything useful. Arata complains, regretting he didn't grind his level up even more. Goto's surprised to see him still standing, soot spilling off his blade. Then the boy moves, spreading a thick cloud that blocks his enemy's vision. Caught off guard, the hunter dodges an attack at the last second, then uses his ice sword to blow all the soot away. The MC leaps over the shadows and brings down a thunderous slash, creating a shockwave. This is the end for you, he yells, while Goto declares he's going to take control of Deep Blue and the association. I won't let you. Arata fires back as the man forces him back. You're prey for my ice blade, kid, Goto continues. Arata only repeats, mine? Then he explodes with rage, pouring out a huge black aura as he screams, that was mine. This is all your fault. And he charges at the executor completely out of control, blocking the blows and sizing up how stubborn the newly awakened guy is. Taking a step back, he says it's time to end this. Then he freezes the whole area around them, trapping Arata completely. Caught off guard, Arata sees ice spikes flying straight at him. A bunch of them hit him all at once, knocking him out cold. Goto walks up to the fallen body, getting ready to finish the kid off, but suddenly a wave of energy slams into him from behind. Not too far away, the 2 Deep Blue hunters show up. You're making a pretty big mess, Ray says. In a threatening tone, she asks Goto what he thinks he's doing. He's surprised to see her there, and she explains she's been following his trail for a while. The blonde guy snorts and says that kid is an irregular. Ray scolds him, asking if that's really how he usually handles things. Meanwhile, Ichika rushes over to help the boy. Ray takes a closer look at him and recognizes him from their earlier run-in. Ichika uses her healing spell on Arata's body, and he slowly starts to wake up. Confused, he tries to figure out where he is and what happened. Ichika gets worried when she hears him mumbling a bunch of stuff, and then still shaken from everything, he passes out again. The deep web Malfoy asks if they're really going to protect the kid and go against the association. Ray corrects him, saying she'll take care of the boy and keep him under watch, reporting everything to the association. Goto tries to argue, but Ray cuts him off, saying Ichika's going to help her clean up this mess. He taunts her, asking if she'll keep that attitude even when she's facing a golden-ranked hunter. He steps closer, saying that with the Goto financial group backing them, they could grow a lot. Annoyed, Ray warns him not to come any closer. He backs off and leaves, saying she'll regret it. Shaken, Ray tells Ichika to go on ahead and take the boy to the medical center. There, the boy suddenly wakes up and sees the girl next to him. She teases him for passing out again. What? You collecting face plants? You could make an album at this point. She stands up and says she'll go get the master real quick. Running through the medical center, she mutters that the master is seriously scatterbrained until she finds her totally lost in the hallway. Ichika starts dragging Ray along like she's a lawnmower, while the master complains the signs are confusing. Ichika is stunned, asking how someone so strong can get lost so easily, and Ray just takes the rant. They go into the boy's room and Ichika asks why he ran away that day and why he fought Goto. Arata starts stammering, but Ray steps in and explains the association is labeling him as an irregular. She says if he registered he'd be safer and would have support, so she asks if there's any reason he won't register. Arata doesn't know what to say, and Ray tells him he'll be kept under surveillance. Arata tries to speak again, but he thinks about how it could put his brother in danger. Seeing how hesitant he is, Ray suggests they go somewhere else. Arata looks confused while Ichika cheers, already knowing where they're headed. Cut to downtown. They've gone out for barbecue. Blown away by the food, Arata thinks he managed to dodge the questions. Ichika tells him he needs to rest and eat. He gets almost suspiciously excited when he sees a juicy piece of meat, deciding to just enjoy the moment. She says the guild's paying for everything, so he should go all in. Arata wonders if he really deserves that kind of hospitality, but gives in and digs into all that deliciousness. The two of them are happy to see him in a better mood. While he can't hold back, he realizes this could have been his life if he had that water orb. Ray apologizes for earlier and says he can ask anything. Ichika says he's super lucky the master is even allowing that. So the MC asks how guild members find demon rifts. The master explains that predicting a rift is like predicting an earthquake. Magnetic disturbances and gravitational distortions help spot where rifts might happen, but it's only about 60% accurate. Arata says he gets it when an alarm cuts them off. A rift prediction alert goes off. A rift will open in Nogawa in 1 hour. Serious, Ray says there isn't much time, worried because it's a silver-level rift. She decides to call the girl over, but Arata interrupts, saying he wants to help. Seeing how determined Arata is, the master decides they should both go, and tells them to be careful. The boy stands up confidently, saying he'll clear that rift with Ichika. The two head to where the rift is supposed to appear, until they finally spot it. It was the Darsa Demon Rift, silver difficulty. Ichika says she hopes the kid's ready, and the two of them sprint straight toward danger, kicking off the rift run. Once they're inside, they find a place full of ruins and wreckage. The boy's confused seeing all that. The girl explains that a lot of places vanish after you beat the boss, but this one seemed like an exception. He starts saying he doesn't see anyone around when Ichika quickly tells him to be quiet. An explosion goes off right in front of them, and a massive sandworm appears. It attacks them immediately, then dives back underground. She tells him they need to listen carefully, and warns there's probably more than one enemy. Arata realizes they're surrounded, and says he'll handle it. He puts his hand on the ground using the soot around him to feel the vibrations in the sand and figure out where the monsters will strike from. One spot stands out, and before the creature can even fully pop out, Arata nails it instantly. Ichika's surprised by how fast he reacted, and he explains that while he was in the hospital, he learned to see his abilities and understand what he could do with the soot. He says the soot isn't just for fighting, it can be used in a bunch of different ways. She smiles and says with that they might actually be able to clear this rift. Using that strategy, the kid keeps attacking non-stop until the last monster goes down. Then he says the boss has to be the only one left. As they move on, she tells him not to let his guard down. They're both impressed when they reach this huge temple-like place, but the vibe changes the second they feel this crushing killing intent in the air. Suddenly, a gigantic monster bursts up from underground and attacks. They dodge, and Arata asks if it's another sandworm. Ichika corrects him right away. That one's way bigger and it has a deadly stinger. Arata's about to get hit from behind, but he says the same trick won't work twice, and fires off a powerful dark slash, ripping the tail clean off. He says hiding in the sand is pointless. His soot can go into the ground so he can track the monster the whole time. She praises him for being smart, saying he got strong really fast. Arata thinks he's lucky to have her with him. Distracted, he doesn't notice a monster's been detected until it rises right in front of them. It was the Rift Boss, a level 29 giant scorpion. Ichika yells that even without its tail, the monster's claws are still insanely dangerous, and she shields him from a devastating strike. The impact is heavy, and Arata uses the opening to rush the creature. The boss raises its massive claw and swings at him. He barely dodges. Then something appears under his feet. Water platforms. Use them, Ichika shouts from below. Arata thanks her and jumps high, using the boost to strike the creature's shell directly. The beast crashes to the ground, defeated. Ichika runs over and congratulates him. The two celebrate the win, until something feels off. The system notification window never pops up. The boy wonders if this is one of those rifts that doesn't disappear after you beat the boss. A voice echoes behind them. It says it was defeated the moment it lost its tail back at the start. But it was pretty fun, the monstrous figure adds. They freak out when they see it's a demonic corpse, and worse, it speaks their language. The demon asks if they liked its puppet. Ishika panics when she realizes a demon can control monsters. The creature raises its hand and says there are still the claws, even in pieces. The defeated monster jerks back up in this creepy way and charges them. They react almost instantly with a combo attack and destroy it. The demon gets annoyed at how fast its puppet went down and decides the two of them will be its new toys. The girl glares at it in disgust as the monster opens a demon rift. It tells them it'll be waiting inside, if they've got the guts to face it. They realize that demon can control the demon dimension completely. The rift looks different, but we don't have a choice, Ishika says, stepping in. Inside, they find themselves in a dark castle, kind of like ones from the human world. A creature watches them from a distance, then ambushes them. Arata reacts on instinct, blasting it with a barrage of soot and knocking it down. Shocked, they see a whole horde of demons appearing ahead. Surrounded, they activate their skills and get ready to fight. With his dark blade, Arata keeps slashing non-stop while Ishika boosts him with buffs. There's too many. We need to get out of here, she yells. They run for the door with a bunch of monsters right on their heels. As they enter, they find the demon corpse waiting for them, saying he was sick of waiting. They tense up when he says he's still got a bunch of minions. Ishika quickly fires back that if they beat him, the minions will disappear. Licking his lips, the demon says he doesn't need to hold back anymore. Then he roars, "Show me your despair." The girl tells them not to pay attention to him, and Arata asks, "Why go through all that trouble turning corpses into underlings?" The demon answers with this cold, classy cruelty. Controlling them is fun and humans are the same, made to be ruled. "I'll make you my toy," he says, raising his hands to show off his power. Ishika gets furious. The MC says he wants to ask something, which makes the monster curious. Then he says, "Do you know how to turn a demon corpse back into a human?" The girl looks shocked when she hears that, while the demon laughs, saying it sounds like there's someone the boy wants to bring back. Arata snaps, demanding an answer. The demon stands up, gathering red energy in his hands, and says he'll only answer after they play a little. That power spreads through the room, and Arata realizes it's actually blood. The droplets start bouncing around at crazy speed, forcing him to use his soot to protect himself. He gets cut up in a bunch of places, and Ichika yells at him to be careful. Then an armored knight takes the opening and attacks. Arata can't react in time, but a barrier appears and blocks the killing blow. Ichika protects him, but that spell takes almost everything she's got, even hurt. She says she's fine and tells him to focus on the demon. She says she'll hold off the armored knights. Arata agrees and pushes through the enemies, heading straight for the demon corpse. The girl activates a skill to patch herself up a little, thinking that with this many enemies there's only one way to handle it. She jumps, spins in midair, and unleashes a charged strike, mixing energy and water. Jets of water blast out in every direction, wiping out a bunch of monsters at once. She notices a lot of them went down, but others are already starting to come back. Determined, she says she can do it as many times as it takes. Meanwhile, Arata closes in on the demon, who notices the soot swirling around him. Then it becomes clear he's mixing the soot into the blood, hardening it so the droplets can't move. Seeing that, the demon says Arata is on this side. Arata stops, confused by what he means. The demon keeps going, saying that outside a lot is happening, but none of that matters in here. My blood or your soot, only one of us wins. Then he lifts a bunch of blood droplets and hurls them, spinning at insane speed. Arata focuses his soot and fires off a barrage, breaking the attack. The demon forms a blood sword and rushes him, leaping in. Arata sees the fast strike and blocks by controlling the soot around him. The creature looks surprised at how quickly he reacts, and Arata keeps defending against those blood whips. The attacks get more and more frantic, turning into this tangled mess of strikes and blocks between them. Arata realizes he's hitting his limit. The demon notices and gets annoyed, saying he needs more excitement. Then he decides to go after the girl first. A blood whip slices past Arata at high speed. He turns to warn her, but then a deadly hit catches him in the back, totally off guard. Blood sprays out and he drops to the floor. The thing walks up, telling him he should have been paying more attention. Holding the blood whip, it says, sounding pleased that the boy will be his minion, and it goes in for the finishing blow. Suddenly Ichika appears and raises her water shield, blocking the clean hit. Focused on keeping the skill active, she makes the demon freeze for a split second. Firmly she shouts, "If it's a fight you want, then that's what you're gonna get." The girl starts healing Arata with her spell, thinking he'll wake up soon. The demon taunts her, saying the boy is probably already dead and that protecting her like that means she must be one lucky woman. Ichika feels sick hearing that, and his words drag up memories from her past. "It's okay," a voice had said while she cried, terrified by what she was seeing. A boy was being held by a horrible monster. He told his sister to run. Frozen in place, she watched the monster lift him into the air. She tries to say something, but the monster squeezes hard, getting ready to bite. The boy panics until his sister finally screams his name, Minato. Blood goes everywhere and the girl is left in shock. Ichika snaps back to the present, takes a deep breath and decides she's not running anymore, as she charges at her enemy. Determined, she thinks she's not that weak little girl from back then anymore. The demon sees what she's doing and lashes out with a blood whip, saying she'll be his next puppet. At the last second, she throws up a water shield and blocks it. Gru, totally fixated on his minions, laughs when he realizes it's just water. Then he starts hammering the shield with hit after hit, pushing the girl to her limit until it finally shatters. So she starts controlling all the water around her, saying water's a flexible element, and mixes it into the blood whip. The creature's impressed by how clever she is, but says he can make way more blood than that. Ichika feels the panic rising. Right then, Arata wakes up and asks for her. She quickly hands him a sphere of water, telling him to mix it with his soot to make his attack stronger. He starts doing it while the demon tries to stop them. Arata reacts fast, firing off a combo of strikes, blending the two abilities. The attacks wrap completely around the blood whips and reach the monster, trapping it. Ichika yells in excitement when she sees it actually working. Taking advantage of the opening, Arata rushes in and lands a heavy hit with his dark blade. When it connects, the monster spits out seasoned tomato sauce. He's weirdly hyped watching the two of them fight, combining their powers with his blood power. They stare him down. He says all he ever knew was how to dominate and exploit people, and that they didn't seem like that kind of person. In his memories, someone asks, "Where are you going, Valgado?" He answers that it might be a bad time, but it's not his problem. A figure wreathed in black flames challenges him. "You're going to abandon your loyalty? That'll be your downfall." Valgado hesitates for a moment, but leaves the room, abandoning that powerful being. Back in the present, he admits that guy really did predict his end. Arata steps closer with zero mercy and demands he answer the earlier question. Valgado laughs, saying the deal was he'd answer if the kid won. Arata snaps, asking again. Then Valgado says a way to turn a demon corpse back into a human doesn't exist. He bursts out laughing. "Once you're changed, you never go back. Doesn't matter what you do." Arata is left completely stunned. The demon keeps laughing and mocking Arata until a system notification pops up, saying the boy evolved from level 15 to level 21. Ichika asks if he's okay since he's just standing there, totally frozen. Then she notices an item dropped, something rare that can give you a skill. She offers it to him, saying he should take it, but he gets pissed when he realizes the skill is the monster's minion control. He decides he's never becoming a zombie manager. The system explains the skill lets you revive and control any dead living being, making them totally obedient to the user, and it also comes with certain upgrades. The system announces the rift is cleared, and the scene shows Arata and Ichika already back in the city. The boy's upset about everything he found out while she tries to cheer him up. Sad, he says that even so he still wants to save his brother, because his brother was everything in his world. Not knowing what to say, Ichika wishes she could get an emotional buff right about now. Meanwhile, at the Deep Blue Guild building, Rei comes to the conclusion that if Arata's abilities come from demon corpses, they should capture him and keep him under surveillance. Ichika jumps up, furious, saying Arata would never hurt anyone, and she knows that because she fought alongside him. Dead serious, she looks at her master and says, "If something happens, I'll be the one to stop him myself." Rei watches the girl's reaction and says she understands. Then she tells Ichika to go home and rest while she checks with the association, leaving the girl feeling pumped from the win. Far from there, Arata goes back to his house. He comments that the place is dirty and abandoned, thinking nobody's been there in a while. He looks at his empty room, feeling his brother's absence even more. The demon's words echo in his head, but Arata says he's not giving up. Then he notices something. A cold breeze is coming from a demon rift that's open inside the house. He goes straight to it and steps in, thinking his brother might be there. The system announces the start of the conquest of the demon rift. Cold. Arata realizes he's in a cave filled with ice crystals. The place feels strangely familiar and huge. He wanders through the tunnels for a long time, lost until he spots a pile of broken branches and roots stacked together. Following that, he realizes it was all covering a door. Thinking the boss is in there, he draws his blade and rips the branches away, clearing the entrance. When he steps inside, Arata freezes. His brother was there, turned into a demon. The system identifies him, Boss Adel, level 38. Arata gets emotional when he finally finds him. He says he looked for him everywhere and never thought he'd actually come back home. He takes a few steps toward his brother, but the creature roars and lands a brutal hit, sending him flying. The kid tries to call out to him, but the beast rushes in fast, throwing out a flurry of attacks. Arata MC jumps at the creature, trying to talk to him, saying he's his little brother, but the monster grabs him and slams him to the ground again. Dazed, Arata has no idea what to do, until he remembers that skill, minion control. Back on his feet, he hesitates, wondering if he should use it or not, while a mysterious figure watches from a distance. The beast winds up to hit again, smashing Arata into the ground one more time. Unable to fight back, he takes a brutal combo of hits, but thinks that compared to what his big brother's been through, this is nothing. The creature raises its arm for a charged strike, when an ice crystal hits it right in the middle of the chest, dropping it instantly. The kid hears a voice mocking him, saying he was still playing Hunter. How pathetic. His real hero had arrived. Arata turns and sees him, his beloved Prince Charming, Goto. He yells at him not to interfere, but the blonde guy just laughs, asking if the kid really wants to protect a demonic corpse. Then Goto realizes that demon was the kid's brother. Arata demands to know what he's doing there, and the hunter coldly answers that it's an executor's job to clean up demon rifts, and that the kid, being a dangerous irregular, needs to be watched at all times. The creature starts getting back up as Arata draws his dark blade, Goto says that if he's protecting a demon, then he's an accomplice and needs to go down in the name of justice. Arata rushes in fast, but the blonde blocks the strike easily. He even mocks him, asking if the kid doesn't have anything better to do. Our MC calmly says his brother is going through a rough phase. Goto forms an ice crystal and throws it past Arata, hitting the monster. The kid panics, and the blonde taunts him for getting distracted while winding up another attack. Arata turns and stops it with a strike. Goto starts parrying the kid's combo, telling him he shouldn't try to act like a badass. He says he's going to freeze the demon and leave it chopped up for Arata, making the kid step back. Arata snaps, "My brother isn't a demonic corpse. I don't care what you say. I don't care what anyone does. He's the only one I've got, and I'll protect him no matter what." He raises the blade fired up with intense determination and yells, "This time, I'm gonna save him." Goto gets hit by a heavy blow, and the sheer impact freaks him out. Arata goes full main character mode, forcing the blonde to stumble back several steps. Muttering angrily, "Guess resisting runs in the family." Confused, the kid asks what he means by that. The blonde replies, "There were 2 other demonic corpses here. 2 pathetic losers who only knew how to beg for money to keep quiet. Of course I took care of them properly," he finishes, leaving Arata frozen in place. Goto smirks and adds, "And the worst part, I didn't even get any XP from those useless idiots." Hearing all that, the kid lets out this insane black aura around him. The blonde raises his hand and says it won't be like last time, then fires a bunch of ice beasts at him. Arata answers with a bombardment of soot, slowing the creatures down and clearing a path to push forward. He lands several strikes, destroying almost all of them, until he realizes he left one behind. Goto lifts a finger, commanding the last beast straight at him. Right then his jacked brother shows up and smashes the ice beast, protecting Arata. Arata tries to call to him, but the monster charges the blonde, knocking him to the ground. Arata worries about Ryo while Goto gets up cursing that beast. He starts wondering if a demonic corpse can really protect a human, but says it doesn't matter. He'll wipe them both out at once. Aremsi tries to figure out a way to stop Goto and remembers he can change the soot state like in Ichika's combo techniques. He puts his hand to the ground, getting the skill ready while the blonde complains he's sick of seeing that smoke. Then mud mode activates, trapping Goto in place. Arata takes the opening and goes in. The blonde manages to break free and barely dodges but ends up close to Ryo, who nails him right in the head. Arata smiles, thinking his brother managed to finish the fight. But when he gets closer, he sees the creature spit blood. The kid freaks out when he notices a bunch of wounds all over his brother's body. He's left in shock while he watches his brother's body slowly crumble into ashes. And Goto is there, standing right where Ryo was. The system announces the rift is complete and about to close. Arata drops to his knees in disbelief. The Golden Captain remembers telling the kid to stop getting so full of himself. He goes dark, then says in a low voice that he's going to kill him. He stands up, repeating it over and over, tears running down as his eyes turn red with rage. He screams and charges with his shadowy blade. Goto watches and wonders if that's some new ability. The blonde guy raises his ice sword and says trash is still trash. They clash. An enormous shockwave echoes through the room. He can't believe the kid is still standing, giving off an overwhelming black aura. Arata drives his sword forward again and hits Goto, blasting him through the wall. The blonde has no idea what's going on as he watches the kid walk closer. With a crazed look, Arata says it doesn't matter how many times he kills him, it'll never be enough. The blonde realizes he's starting to feel scared, stunned by the sheer size of the killing intent wrapped around Arata. He gets up and like it's his last breath starts charging his ice skill, then freezes when he notices several black weapons aimed right at him. The kid fires them all at once, hitting Goto and slamming him to the ground. Arata walks up slowly and asks with a completely unhinged aura if it's over already. Weak battery Thor thinks he needs to get the hell out of there. Arata catches on and releases a violet shock in every direction, making chunks of rock crash down onto the blonde. Consumed by pure rage, he yells, "Just die," and launches a straight-up attack at him. A water shield appears, protecting Goto at the last second as Ichika screams for Arata. She realizes the strike keeps getting stronger until it breaks through the shield and hits her, throwing her to the ground. Terrified, Ichika tries to figure out what's happening. She gets up and says she won't let him kill anyone, begging him to snap out of it. Arata hesitates for a split second, lost in his madness. Our legendary hero comments that the association is probably already on the way. He says the irregular losing control is their fault, and adds that this will be the girl's end too. Ichika knows she has to act fast. Arata, completely out of control, releases a massive black power that explodes outward, wrecking parts of nearby buildings. Ray watches from the surveillance room and says maybe she went too easy on the 2 of them, before rushing out. Somewhere else, in the Sukyu Guild building, someone talks on the phone, saying the situation is seriously bad and the association's failure is obvious. It's our femboy saying it's time to enjoy the show. Back on the battlefield, Arata winds up another soot-black strike, sending out wave after wave. One of them heads straight for Ichika, who's staring at it with no strength left, until a wave of blue energy stops the attack. Ichika smiles in relief when she sees her master finally arrived. The girl apologizes as she collapses, saying she lost control of the situation. Ray catches her and says it's not her fault, no one's fault but her own. Then she looks at Arata, unrecognizable now, and feels awful, realizing the boy seems completely lost. She decides to step in, but a greenish light cuts her off. Takuto appears, saying the irregular is finally showing his true nature. Ray answers that her guild will take responsibility and bring the boy back, but he sighs and says the association sees it differently and raises his hand to charge his power. Ray is shaken by the situation, while Takuto sighs, asking why everyone's so worried about Arata. She explains it's her guild's responsibility and tells him to be careful. Arata rushes at the two of them and the femboy just smiles as the blade passes close to his neck. Then he vanishes, leaving only green energy hanging in the air. Ray notices cherry blossom petals scattering as a blur appears behind Arata, landing a wind strike straight into his chest. She's impressed Takuto managed to stop Arata in a single move. Worried, Ray says the boy could die and she won't allow that. The young man replies that she's way too attached to the kid and promises he won't kill him. He only restrained him. He watches Arata and says it'd be a waste to get rid of someone so interesting. Then Arata gets back up, creating several shadow weapons and hurling them at Takuto. Fascinated, he concludes the kid is using the power of demonic corpses. The weapons fall apart the moment they touch the green aura, while Takuto comments that the kid's abilities are still really rough. He warns Ray that if this keeps going, the whole area will be destroyed, and that he'll take Arata to the association right away. She protests, asking what's going to happen, but Takuto just says that's up to the association. Ray watches Takuto focus that green energy in his hand and throw it at Arata, wrapping him up in two huge wings. She yells, demanding to know what he's doing, but Arata shows up unconscious, no longer in a rage. Takuto calmly explains he just put the kid in sleep mode. He says goodbye, telling her see you later, and vanishes. Ray vents, saying Takuto is always so laid back and impossible to figure out. Ichika calls for her master, who walks over and says the civilian evacuation is finished. Relieved, the woman says the worst has been avoided, until Ichika asks where Arata is, and the master chooses to stay silent. Arata wakes up somewhere dark in handcuffs. He tries to understand what's going on and remember what happened. A figure appears in front of him, holding something that looks like a whip. With a creepy smile, the person says they're sorry to have kept him waiting. Among the wreckage from the battle, a hand pops up trying to crawl out. It's Goto, struggling to get back on his feet. He can't accept being humiliated by Arata. With hate in his eyes, he swears he'll surpass the 5 heavens, and he laughs, imagining Arata must be getting punished right this second. At the headquarters of the Japan Hunters Association, the big guy asks everyone for their attention. He apologizes for interrupting, but says he needs to announce something as the association's director. Hands clasped, he gets straight to it. The irregular has been captured. Leo immediately objects, saying Arata isn't a bad person, and locking him up without proof is unfair. Rai asks where the kid is and what they did to him. The director explains the child was detained for going out of control, causing massive damage in urban areas and breaking the association's rules. Leo is shocked hearing that. The director says Arata showed power similar to the demonic corpses, and that made a lot of hunters argue he should be eliminated. Rai and Leo protest, saying that's way too extreme. The director concludes that the irregular's identity will be investigated, along with his connection to the demonic corpses. Shion feels bad for the kid, saying that officer has to be involved. The director wraps up by warning that demonic corpse activity might increase, and everyone needs to stay on full alert. Rai is shaken and decides she has to act immediately. In the association's underground first-class prison, Arata is cuffed while the officer interrogates him. The man warns he'll keep going even if Arata passes out. He just needs to say what his relationship is with the demonic corpses. Arata snorts, saying he doesn't know anything. Not satisfied, the officer raises the whip, but someone stops him. Rai walks in, introduces herself as the leader of Deep Blue, and orders the interrogation to stop. In a casual tone, the officer asks what she's doing there and whether she has permission. Rai says she does, and the guy gets suspicious. She asks to speak to the kid alone, and he warns her not to break any rules. Rai steps up to Arata and says he looks a lot more tame now. She asks if he remembers losing control, and he looks confused. Rai explains he tried to kill both Goto and Ichika. Arata gets worried, but she reassures him that Ichika's fine. Arata says, totally drained, that it's only natural he gets punished. After all, he has nothing left. Nothing matters anymore. Rai tries to warn him that if he keeps acting like that, the interrogation will continue. Suddenly a notification pops up, an emergency alert. Hunters disappeared inside a rift, and Ichika was sent on the mission. Rai gets furious, saying the girl is way too reckless, as the scene shows Ichika entering that demonic rift. Worried, Arata asks what happened to his friend. Rai only says there was an emergency, and she needs to talk to the director. Arata tries to say something, but she cuts him off, saying he can't change the past, but there's still something he can do while he's a hunter. Arata mutters that there's nothing he can do. Then in a sudden move, Rai frees him, saying she's going to trust her gut. Arata just stands there not reacting. When the guard comes back to the cell, he says she claims she had permission to be there, but when he checked, it turned out that wasn't true. He declares that even if she's a guild master, he won't show any mercy. Raising his whip, he explains that place has a field that messes with abilities, except for his whip. Then he charges at them. Rai stops him with a single kick to the chest, knocking him down and leaving him gasping for air. She says, congrats, extra. Next time I'll get permission. Then she checks the status of the available hunters, seeing there's no one there. Rai looks at Arata and tells him that obsessing over the past won't change anything. The only thing that matters is the choice he makes right now. Arata thinks it over. He lost what he loved most, but he found friends along the way. Then, determined, he says he won't lose anyone else. Rai smiles, proud, and promises they'll all have a barbecue together again someday. Arata then runs through the prison by himself and runs into other guards in the hallway, yelling that the prisoner escaped. He freezes, not knowing what to do, until he feels someone tap his shoulder. Leo shows up, saying he got there just in time, and asks what Arata's planning to do. The kid hesitates, and Leo adds, "It's because of your brother, right?" Arata says no. Right now he just wants to save his friend. He says that as long as he can do that, he doesn't care what happens to him. Impressed, Leo says Arata really is a man of principles. Then he tells the hunters that he'll personally keep an eye on the irregular. "Just let the director know," he says, telling them to get out of there. Our fireboy tells Arata they need to move, and Arata's deeply grateful as they escape. The two of them come running through the city, and the scene cuts to Ichika getting attacked by two enemies. Arata and Leo reach the rift. Leo comments that the kid said a friend was in danger. Arata explains that several silver rank hunters have disappeared. Leo thinks that's weird, since this rift should be around the same level. They decide to go in, and the system announces the start of the conquest. Inside, they find themselves in a huge, dense forest. Leo points out that since there are no monsters nearby, the problem has to be the boss. Arata uses his skill to search for it, and Leo notices the kid's new ability. Something moves nearby, and a creature jumps out of the bushes. Leo raises his flaming fist and takes it out instantly. Another monster appears on the other side, but Arata complains they're getting in the way, then slices it in half. Leo notices the kid is way stronger than before. Arata, still using his Wi-Fi mode, says he feels a weird presence. Then a girl appears in front of them, covered in wounds, begging for help. Arata's relieved she's alive, and asks what happened. She tries to explain that the hunters were transformed, but a demon bites her from behind. She screams in pain as she starts transforming right in front of them, releasing an intense green aura. They realize it's a demonic corpse, the infection type. The demonic corpse charges at them. Up close, Arata freezes. Seeing that girl reminds him of his brother, and flashes of memory lock him in place. In shock, he completely shuts down. Leo asks what he's doing, but Arata still hesitates and gets hit. Leo asks if he's okay, and Arata panics, saying he can't kill a person. Leo takes that seriously as the two demonic corpses keep coming. Then Leo says they're not people anymore, and he unleashes his flames, roasting them without hesitation. Arata, still shaken, can't believe what he just saw. Leo calmly explains they probably died the moment they ran into the boss. Still unsure, Arata makes him continue. Those hunters probably ended up like that trying to help the others. Arata finally understands the situation better. Raising his flames, our fireboy says he won't let a single infected one escape, because the damage could be irreversible. That's when he notices it, a bright green aura coming from inside a tree. On edge, they watch a bizarre creature emerge from it. When Arata hears something behind him, he turns around and sees Ichika beside him, badly hurt. He calls out to her, but she screams in pain as a purple aura starts consuming her. Arata rushes over as Ichika collapses, saying it's already too late for her. She turns away, frustrated, saying she couldn't protect anyone. With a sad look, she says that even if it was only for a little while, she was happy she got to meet him. Arata, helpless, promises he'll find a way to help her. He lifts her up, holding her hands. Ichika stops him and says, "Arata, keep getting stronger. Believe in yourself." She looks at him and adds, "Please save as many people as you can." Before she can finish, her voice gives out. Arata screams her name, desperate. Leo watches the scene as that creature attacks him. He blocks the blow with his fists, while Arata holds Ichika's hand and watches her closely. The transformation is happening way too fast, and he desperately tries to think of a way to stop it. Then the girl stands up. With red eyes and a pulsing purple aura, she stares at him in a terrifying way. Leo yells from behind, telling him to put his feelings aside. "Take her down," he orders, as the creature charges. Arata is left in shock, remembering the moments with his friend. He dodges at the very last second, yelling that he can't do this. Leo, impatient, steps in to attack, but Arata grabs him. He shouts that she's his only friend. The hunter snaps at him. She's not human anymore, but the boy insists she's still Ichika. Right then, he sees the creature behind Leo, about to bite him. Arata yanks him away just in time. They realize they're running out of time. Arata tries to think of a solution. Thinking back on what happened recently, he remembers that skill, minion control, figuring maybe he can hold her back with it. He reaches his hand toward Ichika, and releases a cloud of soot, wrapping around her. The system warns that the skill is being used. A seal starts forming, while a sphere of energy spins above the girl. Her aura starts slowly fading. She drops to her knees, and the system confirms. "Congrats. You captured a wild Ichika." Arata walks up, noticing the vibe around her is different. The girl only answers with a low grunt. He can tell the transformation was interrupted, while Leo tells him to be careful. Arata stands up and explains that he turned Ichika into his minion. Leo is stunned, trying to figure out what kind of ability that is, thinking maybe she can still be saved. Suddenly, Ichika notices something, and she lunges at a nearby creature, slashing it with her claws. Before that, the beast bites her arm, but Ichika just smiles. Arata explains she can't be transformed anymore. Then the girl smashes the monster's head with her other arm, making an opening for Arata to move in. With his dark blade, he slices the monster in half. The system notifies them that the boss was defeated, and the rift was cleared. The scene cuts to the deep blue building. Rage is shocked as she listens to the report, watching her student now completely different. Leo explains that when they found Echika, she was already infected by the boss. Arata adds that he used minion control, a skill he learned from another boss. Rei tries to process it all, grieving for Echika. Arata says it was the only way not to lose her completely. The master looks at the girl and calls her name, and that's when Echika finally responds, saying Rei's name. Everyone freezes when they hear it. Arata asks if she can talk, and Echika confirms she can. Rei asks who she is, and Echika answers, I'm a demonic corpse, but I'm not too. That person's consciousness is still there, weak, but it's there. That leaves everyone silent. Arata feels relieved, seeing there might be a way to save her. Leo asks for a second, wondering if Dark Echika can follow instructions and not attack people. The girl just stares at him. Arata says it won't happen. He won't let it. Leo asks how he can prove that. He looks around, spots a cat, and tells Echika to play with it. She slowly walks over to the cat, pets it, and plays with it gently. Rei watches, emotional. Leo is freaked out. The cat is totally calm in front of a demonic corpse. He realizes Echika's kindness is still there, and she doesn't seem dangerous. Dark Echika decides to walk up to the three of them, cutting into their moment. Leo backs up, asking her not to get so close. Rei teases him, asking if he's scared of cats. The two younger ones laugh at his reaction. Rei tells Arata to look after the girl, while she reports everything to the association. He agrees, excited. He turns to Echika and says that from now on, they'll stay together. Goth Echika lifts the cat's little paw, agreeing in an adorable way, saying they'll be together forever. Arata just smiles. Far away in another building, a woman was studying a chart. Alarmed, she says multiple disturbances were detected, pointing to a massive rift forming. In the association director's office, an employee rushes in and reports, signs of a large-scale rift have been detected. Hearing that, the man orders Code 0 to be issued to all guilds. The subordinate confirms and runs out. The director takes a deep breath. 11 years, so it's finally time, he mutters, staring at an old photo. Meanwhile, at the Deep Blue Guild, someone announces the director activated Code 0. Rei and Leo are stunned. The scene cuts to a busy city street. A crack opens in the sky and rapidly spreads. People panic, saying it looks like the sky is falling, like it's the end of the world. Several purple spheres emerge from the rift, along with countless beasts. The crowd starts running in desperation. Two hunters assess the situation as monsters attack and people get transformed one after another. They're quickly surrounded. Then all of a sudden, a rain of fire falls from the sky, wiping out a bunch of enemies. The golden hunters have arrived. Leo, realizing how serious the situation is, he orders his subordinates to help evacuate the civilians. He suggests to Rei that they go into the rift, and she replies that it looks just like what happened 17 years ago. A rift so huge that nobody knew what was inside. Leo agrees. Nearby, the director himself shows up with a woman. He says that this time everything will be different. They won't repeat the zero-limit incident. The woman, already stepping into the rift, just says they'll deal with it quickly. Not far from there, our femboy watches the opening with a grin and says he's been looking forward to this moment as he goes in. At the same time, Arata and Dark Echika run through the streets, carrying out the mission they were given. Protect the civilians, while Rei and Leo are inside the rift. They keep attacking non-stop. A mother holds her child and says it's okay, the hunters are here. Then the rift starts leaking a black aura, and something begins coming out. Several flying monsters appear in the sky. Arata is shocked by how many there are. He says it's his first time fighting beasts like that. One of the creatures dives at the mother and child. Arata throws his soot, hitting the monster in the head. While running, he realizes his attacks are basically just distractions. He reaches them and asks if they're okay, and she thanks him through tears. Arata looks up and sees hundreds and hundreds of monsters just like that one. Overwhelmed, he wonders what they're even supposed to do now. Arata says he can't reach the monsters from that far away, and Dark Echika just agrees. The number of creatures skyrockets and they start attacking, blowing up everything in their path. Seeing that, the boy decides to fight back. He fires off a bunch of attacks with his soot, but only a few creatures get hit. He realizes those mosquito-looking things are in turbo mode. As he tries to throw more hits, a trio of hunters arrives. They see how bad it is and start backing him up. Arata desperately tries to think of a solution. Staring at the insane number of monsters in the sky, he says he needs to stop them first. The attacks keep wrecking the city, until suddenly an idea clicks in his head. Standing in front of the flying beasts, Arata starts releasing a massive cloud of soot from his whole body, quickly filling the space around him. With a sharp motion of his fists, he yells, activating cement mode. The soot in the air starts hardening around several monsters nearby, locking up their movement. He pushes himself to the limit, pumping out even more soot and dragging the creatures down to the ground, dropping a bunch of them at once. Dark Echika takes the opening and rushes in, finishing them all in one go. Arata celebrates the plan worked, then he turns to the next group of enemies and decides to boost his power. Raising his blade into the air, he cranks up the soot in the air even more. With everything he's got, he jumps and brings down a heavy strike, taking out several beasts around him. The bystanders watch from a distance, amazed at the kid. Everyone cheers, relieved that that brutal fight is finally over. The protagonist collapses to the ground, exhausted, when one of the hunters walks up and thanks him for the incredible work. Arata accepts the kind gesture and shakes his hand. Then he looks toward that massive rift, hoping his allies make it. When that hunter answers his phone, he yells that he doesn't understand how the association building is on fire. The story tells us about the association. The the heart of the defense against demonic corpses. That's where the biggest guild is. Sewa, responsible for overseeing everything. Things like the ID system, the records of old demonic rifts, the operations room that sends orders to every guild, and departments like combat, support, administration, and media control. If that place falls, Japan's entire anti-demonic corpse defense will collapse. The scene cuts back to the present. The director's subordinate coordinates the hunters. Regular hunters work in pairs. Bronzes defend the main bases. Silvers take on the enemy. He raises his hand and declares that with the gold hunters gone, everyone has to stick together. Then something catches his eye. He sees several flying monsters closing in. He panics, thinking it might be a coordinated attack, right when most of the hunters are far away. A random guy runs up to him saying the delivery arrived at the medical center. Kohaku says he'll handle it, and tells the subordinate to gather more info. As he runs, he wonders if his master is okay. When he gets to the center, he finds the place surrounded by flames. Two monstrous creatures are staring him down, a giant bear and a pterodactyl. The bear shoots a blast of fire and he barely dodges it, but the pterodactyl beats its wings hard and throwing the flames at the hunter. He yells at the beast that they can't just do whatever they want, while trying to figure out how two demonic corpses are actually working together. That's when someone shows up and says they didn't think everything was really on fire. Our protagonist in Dark Ichika had arrived. The boy sizes up the situation and tells the hunter to handle the monsters while he deals with the fire. The young hunter snaps back, saying he's not taking orders from some freelance hunter, but when he looks closer, he recognizes Arata as the runaway irregular from the association, and he realizes the girl next to him has an aura similar to a demonic corpse. Then the boy releases his ability into the air, leaving number 2 shocked that it's Sut. She starts putting out the flames, just as the bear charges, throwing itself at Arata. But Kohaku reacts fast, turning the monster to stone. He's impressed when he sees that ability. Meanwhile, little number 2 comments that she just added another ugly statue to her collection. Then he gathers energy in his hands and touches the ground, pulling up a stone spear. He jumps and smashes the statue with one heavy blow. Calling out to Arata, he says he'll ignore him for now because of the emergency, but later they're settling the score. Arata agrees, honestly relieved to have an ally. Then the last pterodactyl flies straight at him, so he focuses the soot into his hands, trying to copy Kohaku's technique. He petrifies the monster midair and slices it in half right after. The hunter is stunned that his skill got copied after Arata only saw it once. With the area finally cleared, Arata compliments the hunter's technique, while Kohaku, blushing, introduces himself. But he immediately scolds Arata for using his abilities so recklessly, warning him it burns through MP faster and leaves dangerous openings. Arata, looking down, admits he never really thought about that since he's been fighting desperately from the start. They drop it and decide where to head next. Meanwhile, not too far away, someone breaks into the association's vault of divine weapons. The person says it's a shame everything's in chaos, while staring at a sword. It's Goto with that straight-up thug look in his eyes. He reaches for the weapon, saying this is the perfect moment to replace the 5 heavens. He grips the sword and releases its power, which floods the room. Seeing that power, he can't stop laughing, celebrating, convinced he's unbeatable now. The next scene shows a hunter fighting an ogre. He jumps, swings through the air, and takes it down like it's nothing. Right then, the side quest trio shows up. The vice leader looks things over, trying to decide which area they should prioritize. Arata says it's weird so many showed up there since there weren't any nearby before. Something clicks for Kohaku. He touches the ground and decides to investigate. Using his power, he senses weird monster activity underground. The 3 of them start running and he tells Arata not to slow him down. Down below, in the storage room, they find a massive hole. They're shocked when they realize the demonic corpses came from there. While everyone was distracted by the rift, monsters slipped in through the underground. Kohaku extends his spear infused with his power and goes straight for the creatures. Arata sees it and gets ready to do the same. But the vice leader reminds him, hold your breath, make some space, and let the power flow. Arata focuses and follows the instructions, and he forms his dark blade more precisely, landing a bunch of rapid strikes on the monsters. Number 2 praises him, noticing the improvement, though he's still suspicious of the girl with the mysterious power. After clearing the area, they move toward the tunnel. Kohaku gathers a huge amount of energy and destroys it, managing to block the passage. He turns to Arata and says they need to clear the other areas now. Arata asks if there aren't other entrances, but Kohaku says for now that was the most urgent thing. Arata says he'll check since he left soot spread around the base. Then he activates his Wi-Fi mode and says there's a strong presence above them. He adds that the biggest concentration of demons is on the upper floors. Kohaku freaks out, saying that's the training center. When they get there, the 3 of them realize what's going on. A demonic rift opened up inside the base. Kohaku yells, frustrated, that nobody noticed because everything's been such a mess, and then a bunch of demonic corpses start pouring out of the rift. They tense up at the situation as number 2 rushes in with his spear. Arata follows, taking down enemy after enemy. The vice leader thinks they need to deal with the rift, but he can't abandon headquarters. Realizing this rift is different from the usual ones, since monsters are coming out of it, Arata offers to go into the rift. Kohaku's shocked, wondering why he'd do that. Why would he go that far? But seeing the boy's determination, he smiles. I'm coming too, he says. He also says he'll leave the base to the other hunters while they head to the nest. Everyone looks at the crack and starts walking toward it. They find themselves in a huge hall packed with statues. Kohaku, suspicious, wonders if this is where those weaklings have been coming from. Arata, meanwhile, wonders if there's someone behind all of this. The vice leader says it's his responsibility to end this fast and without anyone dying. The three of them decide to push forward through the hall. That's when number 2 senses something weird and dark in the air. Then the story shows the Golden Hunters are split up across 3 different locations. Back in the hall, Kohaku thinks it's strange how empty the place is. Then he asks Arata what he's fighting for. The kid hesitates, looking discouraged. Seeing that, Kohaku answers firmly. He's fighting for the association's director, Mr. Dogami. As long as he's there, the hunters will be able to face the demonic corpses. And he adds, compared to him, you're just not handsome. The two laugh at that. Kohaku tries to say seriously that they should see him fight, and he keeps praising his master, saying he's basically unstoppable, the Super Bowl's own star. Dark Ichika says he's a weirdo, and he replies that was rude. Embarrassed, he changes the subject, reminding Arata to keep the flow of power inside him steady. Then they finally reach the end of the hall, standing in front of a gigantic door, and decide to go into the next room. Inside, something slams into the ground in a rage. A demonic beast stares them down with its 2 horrifying heads. A blinding light flashes from the creature's eyes, stunning them for a moment. When Kohaku can see again, he finds his master on the ground, badly hurt. He starts to panic. Arata yells his name, asking what happened. Kohaku had only dropped to his knees when the creature's eyes lit up. Then Dark Ichika starts screaming too. Arata looks at the creature and suddenly he's alone. The light flashes again as he stares it down. 2 figures appear in front of him, his brother and his only friend, in pain as they transform into demonic corpses. They ask why Arata couldn't save them, and the boy is terrified. He drops to his knees and starts crying uncontrollably. The creature watches, satisfied, as Arata shrinks into his own darkness. But then he snaps awake from that nightmare. Determined, he stands up, saying he still has to bring Ichika back. He puts a hand on his chest and feels the power flowing. Thinking about the people he wants to protect, he looks up and sees a sphere of water forming like Ichika's magic. Suddenly, the creature fires a blast of energy from its mouth. Straight at the protagonist, an explosion goes off and a cross appears. Arata had created a shield mixed from soot and water, protecting himself from the attack. The creature launches a flurry of attacks and Arata blocks as best he can. He thinks he managed to blend Ichika's power to strengthen his defense. With his hand outstretched, Arata forms a black sphere, while also controlling the power of water. Behind him, Kohaku mourns his master's death. He just stares at the lifeless body. Then he remembers. The irregular was alone, fighting non-stop. Holding back his despair, Kohaku slams his forehead into the ground hard, trying to get his head straight. He shouts that he's number 2 of the Seiwa Guild, to remind himself who he is. Now focused, he sizes up the situation around him. That's when he realizes 4 monstrous creatures are staring at him like he's food. Meanwhile, Arata keeps taking hit after hit, all of it bouncing off his shield. The creature gets pissed that it can't bring him down. Our boy tries to flank the monster. When another demon rushes in from behind, the claws get dangerously close, until everything suddenly stops. Dark Ichika appears, piercing the creature with her own claws, leaving it dead. Arata turns and asks how Kohaku is doing. He just tells him to watch closely, showing off his stone armor. Then he charges in and throws a strike that hits all 4 monsters at once, setting off an explosion in the room. The MC can only stare, shocked at number 2's power, while Moving Stone keeps attacking non-stop, having fun with it. A monster tries to catch Arata from behind, but he barely dodges. Realizing there's still one left, the creature lunges, and Arata struggles to block. He backs up, hearing Kohaku shout behind him, "Sharpen your mana." The kid tries to understand what that means, while he hears, "If you can't do it now, this is your limit." Arata closes his eyes and focuses, aiming for maximum precision. He opens them and sees his power refined. Then he creates a blade with 2 attributes, water and soot. In that same instant, he charges forward and grips his sword with all his strength, and with one perfect strike, he pierces the creature, taking it down once and for all. Exhausted, Arata first checks if the other 2 are okay. Kohaku watches him proudly, while the boy collapses to the ground, hearing, "That was way too close." Number 2 sees the kid's potential, shocked by how fast he's growing. Meanwhile, our gloomy kitty just keeps messing with Arata. Back at headquarters, Kohaku says that somehow everyone managed to protect the place. But their next step was to face that while she looks out the window at her target, the monstrous rift hanging over the city, all while wondering how her master is doing. Xian complains that her clothes are dirty, and he replies that it's because she chose that outfit. She huffs, then holds out her hand and fires a powerful beam of light, carving a huge path through the forest. She says now they've got a nice comfy trail, pleased with herself as she hums. The director just sighs, remembering the Zero Border incident from 11 years ago. That day, countless lives were lost when demonic corpses escaped from a massive rift. Then he looks around at the forest and thinks it's way too quiet. The woman says out loud that the enemies must be hiding nearby. She looks up and says their search is finally over. In front of them stood a gigantic tree. The director explains that the power coming from there is at least A rank. Xian just says she wants to finish this fast so they can leave. Then 2 winged horned demonic creatures appear, both disaster class, the kind of beings that could wipe out an entire country. One of them says they finally made it, while the other says this is the end for the two of them. At the same time, a bunch of A-class flying creatures appear around the tree. The entities mock them, saying the silver executors were easy, and asking how long the gold ones will last. Then they fire a powerful blast of red light. The director focuses his energy, telling them to watch what a gold executor really looks like. They're both blinded by the light he releases. When it fades, the director is equipped with a massive golden suit of armor. Xion floats in the air, gathering a gigantic sphere of lightning, while the Megazord raises its arm and blocks that red beam. The sphere keeps growing, and the creatures can't believe what they're seeing. They get furious and order their underlings to attack all at once. As the attacks close in, Xion gives a slight smile and throws the colossal sphere. The monsters panic when they see it coming. They try to hold out, but the explosion is huge, wiping out the whole area. With the place wrecked, the woman says the others must have finished too. Somewhere else, Ray and Leo quickly take down a pair of monsters, while the femboy destroys a demonic skeleton, complaining about the lack of evidence of where it was. At headquarters, Kohaku orders her subordinates to secure the area. Then she gets a call and decides to announce to everyone, the director is coming back. Everyone celebrates the news and the end of that crisis. Meanwhile, near headquarters, a shadowy figure appears in the sky. Everyone looks up at him, terrified. It was Goto, now basically a Super Saiyan, floating in the air surrounded by lightning and water, showing off that gorgeous seductive smile. He's wrapped in a powerful purple aura while everything burns. Ray gets an alert. A strange energy has been detected near HQ. The secretary celebrates the master's return, but Ray, looking at the monitor, sees Goto. The staff member says they can't get in touch with the Seiwa Guild. That's when Ray notices Ichika and Arata there, and he bolts out of the room hoping they can hold on. But the woman warns Ray that she's heading the opposite way. Meanwhile, the blonde guy fires waves of blue energy across the city, making civilians run in panic. Arata tells Dark Ichika to protect everyone, while Kohaku watches in shock, realizing Goto is holding a divine weapon. He explains that these weapons choose their owner, not the other way around, and adds that the vault shouldn't have opened for someone like Goto. The blonde starts shaking like a power tool. His pupil dilates and then two black bodies burst out of him as he screams in pain. Arata curses while the goth girl is horrified at how disgusting it is. The things rush in, firing blue blasts. The boy shields the civilians, and he, Ichika, and Kohaku destroy the monsters quickly. Goto keeps attacking from the sky, making an icy rainfall. The MC realizes he's hitting his limit. The villain smiles and throws another ice sphere. Arata sees how dangerous it is, so he shoves everyone out of the way to protect them, taking the hit in the back. Out of mana, he feels his body give out like a phone at 1%. Dark Ichika, injured, mutters that she has to keep protecting them. Our number 2, surrounded. Scream, because this is your responsibility as vice leader. When everything looks like it's about to fall apart, Rhea shows up on the battlefield. She runs up to them and goes, "Alright guys, playtime's over." Then she notices something. The three of them were exhausted and barely moving, but they managed to evacuate everyone so she could fight without holding back. Leaving them to rest, she heads into the fight. Goto, completely out of control, unleashes a ridiculous amount of power. Then he sees a figure coming in, firing off a bunch of electric blasts. But the figure's way too fast, and in an instant, it's right at his neck. Freaked out, he takes a brutal hit to the chest and gets launched away. Rhea, totally calm, says his judgment was wrong and that she's not holding back anymore. On the ground, the blonde guy hears her say that out of all the choices he could have made, he chose to abandon his own humanity. He spits a jet of water at her, and she just gets even more pissed at the nerve. She releases even more power, water and lightning mixed with pure rage. Then a blast of light swallows the whole place. The scene cuts to Xion and Dogami running out of that forest. She asks why Ray is the strongest golden ranker and not him. The director says that's only true when she fights alone, without worrying about anyone around her. Since she controls water and lightning at the same time, it turns into total chaos, which is why she ended up walking a lonely path. That's how she became the first irregular known by the association. The battlefield was wrapped in a full-on storm. Kohaku wakes up because of the rain, while some green energy heals him. Then he sees a massive tornado in front of him, spinning with electricity and water, bigger than skyscrapers, while everything around it burns. Up above, Ray notices he's awake and immediately looks relieved. Even though he's beat up, he tries to get up and fight, but she orders him to back off, straight up command, eyes locked on the enemy, and he accepts without arguing. Ray says she'll hold Goto back and tells him to get the others far away from there. Kohaku looks at them and carries them through the wreckage, searching for shelter. He uses his power to dig a hole right there. Then he fills it with a golden liquid, lowering the two of them into it. Far away, Goto tries to defend himself from non-stop attacks. Ray watches and regrets ever letting something like this happen. Powering up her aura, she yells that she should have handled this alone from the start. He starts releasing even more power in response, which makes the human freezer short-circuit. Then a bunch of ice swords form and fly straight at Ray. She raises a water shield and blocks the ones that would have hit her. As the blades crash into it, she remembers her past. Her parents are talking to her when she was a kid, promising they'd protect their city. She closes her eyes to stay focused, then raises her arms, crackling with electricity. With all her fury, she throws lightning into that violent storm. Little by little, she starts controlling it with everything she's got. then hurls it at Goto, who gets caught inside the storm. He screams in pain as he's hit by endless shocks inside the cyclone. Down below, Kohaku watches the insane power of mixing water and electricity. He can tell it has to be tearing her up, and he worries about her limit. Then we see her past, the pain electricity caused inside her body. People whispered that her orb was damaged, calling her unstable and an irregular. The young guy says he can't even imagine how hard her path must have been. Raul, focused, gathers the lightning spinning around her body and throws it at Goto again. He screams even louder, like a microwave going haywire. She doesn't stop attacking for even a second, controlling everything with precision. The attacks blend into the tornado that keeps him trapped. Kohaku watches, stunned at how brutal the fight is. The blonde guy finally breaks out and leaps into the air. Raul sees him, but she doesn't even flinch at him escaping. He attacks her, and she keeps dodging non-stop, getting closer and closer. In a split-second mistake, Raul grabs his hand and stops his movement. She charges her fist with electricity and says, "Now take it." Goto realizes he's trapped, and gets hit with a crazy shock, screaming in pain. The electricity spreads through the water around him, blasting him away. Raul walks up and sees he can still stand, which honestly impresses her. He smiles with that villain look that clearly says he's never been to therapy. That makes her remember her master's death and how she blamed herself whenever people around her got hurt. Ri tries to hold on to her master's last words, then she stares Goto down and says firmly that she's going to end this for both of them. The rain kept pouring non-stop over the battlefield. Kohaku notices the water around them starting to bubble when Goto screams saying Ri will be his, while firing off bursts of electricity. Ri raises her arm and warns him he won't be able to move after that attack. The electricity starts gathering at the tips of her fingers. The blonde guy freaks out when he sees a huge energy sphere forming in the sky dropping straight toward him. With sparks in her eyes, Ri watches the massive explosion that goes off right in front of Goto. From far away, Kohaku recognizes it as a hydrogen explosion, totally stunned by her insane level of control. She finally lands on the ground, almost collapsing from exhaustion. Number 2 runs over to her worried. She thanks him and stands up right away, but then she freezes, startled. She sees the citizens celebrating her victory, chanting her name, thinking it was finally over. Moved by the moment, Ri sighs, "All right, I've done way too much overtime for today." But then out of nowhere, Goto appears behind her and drives a blade straight through her chest. With a cruel smile, he celebrates as Ri drops to the ground. Everyone goes still as the blood starts spreading. Lying there, she blames herself for letting her guard down. Crying, she mourns her master, saying that in the end, she wound up alone. Goto gets ready for the finishing blow, acting like he's the champion. At the last second, Dark Ichika shows up and blocks the attack. Ri asks what she's doing, and the girl yells, emotional, that her master wasn't alone. Ri starts crying when the blonde guy shakes Ichika off and throws her away. Then he starts forming ice crystals to attack Ri. Regular hunters jump in between them, trying to protect her, even if it costs them their lives. Seeing everyone risking themselves for her, Ri begs them to stop and run. But an explosion erupts in the middle of the fight. She passes out, thinking everyone's going to die because of her. Kohaku, desperate, tries to heal her while begging for help. Our Apocalypse Ken laughs, wishing for everyone to die. But then something purple shoots in at a terrifying speed, slamming the villain in the face and launching him away. Before he can even react, Goto gets hit midair by several black blades at once. Seeing the swords, Kohaku recognizes the soot abilities. Goto sneers, saying someone that trash shouldn't even be alive. Arata answers by unleashing a barrage of soot, causing a huge explosion. Almost out of energy, the villain looks ahead. Arata with red eyes, bulging veins, and a horn on his forehead, telling him to shut up. Rei panics when she realizes that's Arata. Pushed to his absolute limit, he stares at Goto with disgust and says, "Just watch my power." Then the MC explains that all of this started with a voice calling him. For a second, he wonders if he somehow became the protagonist of an isekai to end up there. A voice mocks him, complaining it has to deal with a loser like this. Arata then sees a chained figure sitting on the ground. He asks where that place is and where Rei is. The mysterious entity perks up, realizing someone can finally hear him. Suit Boy tenses up, raises his blade and demands to know who he is. The figure takes a deep breath and says his name is Regnas, claiming he's the one who gave Arata his power. Arata slices him in half without hesitating, while the little flame complains about how rude he is. The rebellious teen tells him to shut up and get him out of there already. Regnas gets serious, and tells him not to say another word, and points at Arata. That sword and that power are his. He's the one who gave him all of it. He tells Arata to understand his role. He's the long-awaited rebel. The entity goes on, saying he has the power to face those who steal from others unfairly. The boy cuts him in half again like he's chopping through a tough cake, annoyed. Then he says he doesn't have time for nonsense. He grabs him by the chains and yells, "If you gave me this power, then send the premium package already." The being laughs at the kid's cleverness and says that Big Baby isn't there anymore. Then with a curious look, he asks what happens if he says no. The irregular thinks for a second, then says that as far as he can tell without his help, he'd still be stuck there. The flame steps closer and says he can only do one thing. 1 minute, I can give you 1 minute of my core's power. We cut back to the present. Arata already using Regnus's power, and he realizes that power had been dormant inside him from the start. Then he says 1 minute is more than enough to deal with him. Goto roars that his appearance doesn't matter and charges, The half-demon creates several reinforced soot shields around himself, draws his sword, and attacks with insane force. The impact throws the blonde guy back. On his knees, he notices several shadowy blades around him, and when they strike, they blow everything up around them. Down and crawling, the bad boy growls that he won't lose to trash like him. Then he looks at the three closest to him and jumps them. Arata calls him pathetic, while our goth girl feels the soot powering her up, letting her form huge claws and strike first. Goto's shocked by her ability, while the MC stares at him with pure contempt. Freaking out, Goto says he's from some rich conglomerate, and that he's going to replace the five heavens and become the strongest. Arata answers, disgusted. You stole an orb, a divine weapon. You're worse than a demon corpse. Rai stares at him, stunned. Hearing that, how is he supposed to kill someone like that? Goto grits his teeth, furious at being insulted by trash like him. Then he draws his sword and yells that he's going to, but blood is already all over his body. Arata reminds him the orb never chose him, so his body can't handle that much power, that he was never someone to begin with. While the blonde tries to run, our supreme horn guy pulls a demon rift out of his pocket. Even number 2 is left with his jaw on the floor. A rift opens in front of Goto, and he watches Arata teleport right in front of him. Grabbing him by the neck with a crazed smile, he sweetly asks him not to run away. Then he asks if he isn't curious to know what happens if the rift closes right then. The two are face to face, one laughing, the other screaming. Rai jumps on Arata, begging him not to do it. Crying, she says it's a point of no return, and hearing her voice makes Arata hesitate for a second. Goto screams as he watches his arm go flying off like a SpaceX rocket. Terrified, he watches Arata walking toward him. The boy thinks of his brother, and at the same time his 1 minute runs out. And just like that, the incidents caused by the large-scale rift finally come to an end. The blonde ends up doing a Loki cosplay behind bars, losing his executor status. In his bed, Arata thinks about how Regna still hasn't shown any sign, and a lot of questions were left unanswered, but something still had to be dealt with. A voice calls him, Arata Tuma, report to court. He and his gorgeous goth girl are in handcuffs in front of the Irregular Conduct Council. The director says, an irregular with unknown power, accused of breaking serious rules and escaping prison. With all that, we'll decide your fate, he announces, with several association hunters there watching the trial. He also says Arata can open demon rifts and asks for everyone's opinion. Ria's the first to stand up. Yeah, he did lose control, but if it weren't for him, Goat wouldn't have been stopped. Leo adds, Arata dealt with a bunch of demon corpses, which most people wouldn't do so easily. Then the femboy suggests someone should be permanently responsible for him. Dogami asks if Shion wants to add anything. Distracted, she asks why the boy fought without taking any money, making the director sigh. Arata says he really did lose control and doesn't understand his power, but he doesn't regret anything. A man in the audience yells at the ridiculous thing he just said. Angry, he says it's impossible to accept a half-demon corpse. Irregulars like you have caused terrible accidents throughout our history. Ria gets worried when she notices the conservatives are there, while Leo says the orb fundamentalists are annoying, and not even Dogami can ignore them. The room turns into a total verbal horror show. The two of them realize it's getting way too extreme, until someone calls for silence. It's the whip guy from the underground prison. The conservatives ask what he, their spokesperson, plans to do. He looks at the director and says, yes, he did conspire with the leader of Deep Blue, and everything that's been said. However, he saw with his own eyes, even hurt and out of strength, he protected all the civilians. If that isn't being an executor, then who is? Staring at the hunter from before, he yells, when Goto brought chaos, where were you? The hunter tries to protest, but the interrogator cuts him off. If anyone deserves punishment, it's me. We treated Goto like he was above everyone, and we abandoned our posts. Several hunters stand up defending Arata. They talk about his courage, how he risked his life, how he defended headquarters. A girl says, he's a real hunter. He fought for us and for the citizens. The director asks for calm and accepts the general decision, then asks the jury if there are any objections. He looks at Arata and declares, the association certifies you as a bronze rank executor, and you'll be taken in by the Deep Blue Guild, which leaves Ray relieved. She looks at the interrogator, grateful. He explains he did it for his sister who was saved, and that he hates owing people anything. The big guy adds, keep protecting people, otherwise you'll be back here real quick. With the verdict over, everyone's celebrating. Arata pulls off his best performance yet, going full blue screen. The director moves on to the next topic, punishing the hunters, which might get Ray and Leo in trouble. Later, our MC walks through the streets, free for the first time. He thinks there's still a lot to sort out, as he looks at his executor's certificate. The pay is good, but he didn't really care about that, until he opens his mailbox and finds a bunch of overdue bills. Instantly changes his mind. He's thinking about his next mission when someone grabs him from behind. A woman hugs him and says she's been waiting for him, and she calls him her dear little lab rat. Arata shoves the woman away and asks who she is. She grabs him by the neck and asks if he'd let her dissect him, practically starving for the boy. He releases soot from his hands, forcing her to back off and raise a barrier to protect herself, all while complimenting his muscles, veins, and neck. She starts drooling, pulls out a bunch of needles and says she can't take it anymore. She jumps at Arata and he panics until a cloud paralyzes her in midair. Rai shows up and says he figured this would happen. Hanging upside down, the woman asks if the director didn't say anything. Annoyed, she says he did. She was just supposed to do it tomorrow in the lab. While Arata asks who the hell she is, she introduces herself, Maki Kaiho, director of the Executors Research Institute. The next day at the Research Institute, the crazy girl and the one-horned guy stare each other down. She's shocked to hear about the rifts and the entity called Regnes. Leaning in, she asks how his body feels. Uncomfortable, he says he has no idea. Suddenly, a bunch of devices latch onto the boy. They lift him into the air and strap him to a frame, and he realizes he's screwed. She starts drooling again, and he stares at her, thinking about getting the hell out of there. Then a robotic voice announces, beginning virtual autopsy scan. Red comments that she's weird, but her skills are on another level. Maki watches all the data with stars in her eyes. Arata, on the other hand, is terrified. She explains that he's different from other executors. His body has traits from demonic corpses. Arata breaks free and says he really does feel something sleeping inside him. Maki gets serious and says his body might be the key to opening the demon realm. Arata glitches out and she asks if he even knows what a demonic rift is. He says it's a hole where evil souls come out, and it only disappears when the boss is killed. She agrees, saying it's like a time-limited dungeon. But there's more. There are structures that look ancient, beings that speak our language, even organized groups. In other words, they have their own world, the demon realm, and the rifts are just pathways. She says she has a theory. There has to be a way to travel to the realm through a rift, and he needs to find it. Arata realizes his abilities might help with that. Maki adds one last thing. When she analyzed him, she found traces of someone else in him, not just him. Arata wonders if it could be Regnes or someone else. She wraps up by telling him to be careful, since nobody's ever tried going to the demon realm before. Arata, determined, says he knows it's dangerous, but if he just stands still, nothing will change. The crazy girl tells him to take it easy, and he says he knows a way. He just needs to make Regnes spill the truth the right way. Staring at the sword, he says, if he needs me, then he can't just Thanos snap me out of existence, right? He turns to her and asks if she can do medical and surgical treatments. When she says yes, Arata pulls the classic woman-repellent burp. Regnes appears in his subconscious, asking if he's an idiot. Still giving him the silent treatment, Arata asks if he really wants to go to the demon realm. The MC says that would be best for him too, which pisses Regnes off. You're weak, you need to do things before that. And he has restrictions that keep him from saying more. Arata draws his sword, sick of all the dodging and vague talk. The purple flame laughs, amused by the kid's nerve and wanting to play along. Surprised, Arata sees Regnes raise a single finger. A wave of power swirls around him, flooding everything with waves of soot. He says this is all he can use right now and mocks the kid's reaction. Then he laughs and shouts, if you were serious earlier, prove it, right here, right now. In the middle of that purple energy, Arata strains, yelling that Regnes is a pain in the ass. With a devilish grin, the entity answers, yeah, these restrictions are a pain in the ass. Demanding the boy show his own power, Arata leaps into the air with the blade in hand, yelling for him to just say what he wants already. Regnes starts talking about the kingdom, when a bunch of chains suddenly appear around his neck. Suit Boy is shocked when he sees that. The talking flame explains, if you want to know, you'll have to break that restriction yourself. At the same time, Arata throws a wave of soot at him. The attack bounces off his evil energy spell. He mocks him. Is that an attack or a sneeze? I can't even hold back. Boom, another restriction. You know? The kid, tired of all the stalling, asks how pathetic he is, and Regnes just bursts out laughing. Then he rises into the air and orders, show me everything you've got or you're dying right here. A rain of attacks falls on Arata, hitting him in the back. The entity sounds disappointed, saying it waited too long for him to finally listen. Arata, panting, says that was nothing compared to what his brother went through. Regnes smiles, creates a bunch of blades behind him and says, that's more like it. And he throws them at the MC, saying that in the end, only soot should remain. The purple flame is surprised. It watches the kid endure it, still standing, guiding lightning with his hand. Then he declares, if it's the same power, then I can control it too. And he creates a bunch of lightning-wrapped weapons and hurls them at the entity. Regnes is surprised but says he can do the same thing, only better. Bigger blades appear around him, smashing Arata's weapons. They surge toward the kid, who raises a reinforced shield, but some blades pierce through and hit him, putting him on edge. The being laughs, doubting he can do anything without relying on its power. Our hero gathers the soot around him, forming a gigantic dark sword. Disappointed, Regnes says, all you do is use my soot. Is this your final move? Arata charges, blending into the soot cloud. Regnes comments, trying to make me drop my guard. Countless blades surround the entity. The flame says it doesn't matter how many weapons he makes, he can control them too. But Arata appears from behind, inside the soot, almost landing a clean hit, dangerously close to the entity's neck. The soot bearer blocks the sword, annoyed, and starts dispersing all that power, but the blade was made of ice. Then Soot Jr. slices through the chains binding the entity, leaving it speechless. Arata reveals he figured Regnes wouldn't be able to control water. Regnes laughs non-stop, impressed he fell for that trick. The boy is shocked to see his hand has now turned into something demonic. Then Regnes says, take my power and get stronger. The rest is on you. Meanwhile, in the real world, Arata was stuck in bed. Ray and Maki talk, guessing he must be with that weird entity. Then the kid starts moving and wakes up like someone who just got a shot in the butt. He hears Ray calling him, so he says he's fine, his wounds don't hurt, but but his master cuts him off with a slap across the face. Maki is stunned and he just freezes. Rei, emotional, warns him to never do something like that again. Ichika could have died too. Arata apologizes, genuinely regretful. She doubles down, never scare us like that again, you're part of my guild. Seeing how much she cares, he just nods. Then he starts feeling pain. Shocks run across his face and she tells him that slap wasn't normal at all. He takes a deep breath and drops the bomb. I did it. I know how to get to the demon kingdom. Sometime later, we see an intense fight. The director Femboy and Xian are attacking Arata. With his red eyes, he thinks he has to reach the demon kingdom. The story jumps back 3 hours earlier, to a meeting where the big guy was hearing all the info about the demon kingdom. Leo asks if all of that is really true and why Regnus would even want to share it. Arata says he knows the entity didn't lie, but he still doesn't get it either. Rei backs him up while the earrings guy asks how you even get to the kingdom. The master gets tense when Arata shows his demon claw. He explains the only way is to defeat the boss of an S-class rift, create another rift inside it, and cross through. Everyone is shocked seeing that rift in his hand. Fanboy is impressed by the ability. The director, not believing it, repeats. S-class? Xian says if an A-class rift is basically an army, an S-class is a full-on disaster and insanely rare. Leo faceplants, saying that even if they know how to get there, it's basically impossible. Arata starts to stand up, but Leo cuts him off, saying he's way too weak to face an S-class. Dogami explains that when an S-class rift appears, protocol requires at least 2 gold hunters, and the survival rate for bronze or silver is 0. The MC, determined, says he's going to the demon kingdom no matter what. Living scared of the rifts and just hoping things get better makes no sense. The director agrees. If they made it to the kingdom, it'd be the Executor's first real offensive. But the problem's still there. Arata needs to get stronger. So Sharon suggests the Minute of Death test and even offers to be his opponent. Rei's surprised by the idea, while Leo says it should be mandatory. Arata gets nervous since he doesn't even know what the test is. Dogami explains it's an insane trial where you have to face 3 volunteers who outrank you for a full minute. The master gets worried about her teammate. The big guy says nobody knows when an S-class rift will show up, so there's no time to waste. Our hero agrees, dead serious. Then we see a beam of light explode, snapping back to the present. Arata drops to the floor. Sharon asks if he's still alive, while Femboy's impressed. 10 seconds. That's already something you can put on a resume. Now at the deep blue building, Rei, dressed for training, cracks her knuckles and says the real training starts now. Arata answers all hyped up, while the goth girl practically purrs with happiness. She explains that the most important thing for skills is imagination, clear, sharp, and precise. She tells them to picture a whoosh, which just confuses both of them. Then she points at the wall and orders them to repeat a basic skill 10,000 times. If they can get the whoosh, they'll notice the whomp. They just keep throwing strikes, having no clue what she's talking about. Hours later, they're wiped out. Then Rei tells them to do it 20,000 more times. They're shocked, and she says, when you think you can't do it anymore, that's when the good stuff happens. Hours later, they're basically dead on the floor. Then a blast of water shoots toward them. He reacts just in time before it hits, scattering it into the air. Surprised, he realizes he managed to activate the skill even while totally exhausted. Rei shows up and smiles at the success, and says that's exactly the kind of thing that decides whether you live or die. Next up, training starts at the Xian Guild. Leo cracks his knuckles and announces, today's special is how much pressure you can handle. They both freeze, but Leo doesn't give them a second. He says training starts now. His underlings light a bunch of torches around the room. Leo declares that in the middle of those violent flames and suffocating heat, they need to keep absolute focus. Then he smacks the chalkboard, telling them to absorb the basics of what a real hunter is. Fireboy puts on his glasses and explains the goal. Analyze and keep your cool in extreme situations. Arata complains about the heat while trying to read. The teacher sees that and hurls a piece of chalk at the kid, yelling at him to never say that again. Then he tells him to focus even with his blood boiling. Hours later, Arata's exhausted, and Leo says there's nothing left to teach. Now he can think better under extreme conditions and seriously high heat. The day before the test, Arata trains alone in the forest, panting. He says that's all he can do, while a shadowy figure watches him from a distance. At the test, Xian, Dogami, and Femboy gather, while Leo and Rei watch from far away. The director warns him, if he fails this time, he won't be allowed to go with them into the S-class rift. The timer starts, and Arata charges in. Determined, he thinks this time he'll last longer in the fight. He creates a cloud of soot because in chaotic, low-visibility battles, avoiding friendly fire is everything. Femboy throws an attack, but realizes too late he'd been immobilized. Dogami sees Arata flank and fires a rain of lightning down on him. Arata dodges like crazy, recognizing the same attack pattern as before. The director, down on one knee, is impressed by how fast the kid adapts. Xian predicts his movement in midair and launches a heavy hit. An explosion goes off, and the target breaks apart into dust. She's shocked to realize he made a decoy that fast. Arata jumps up, gathers soot in his hand, and fires a blast at all three. Femboy thinks the kid had a nice moment, but this is where it ends. Then he unleashes a series of wind strikes that explode on impact. From a distance, Leo comments that making it to 40 seconds is huge progress. The three regroup, saying he messed up by leaving himself with no escape routes. But then they notice a rift had opened and he was behind them, tired, holding his transformed arm. He remembers all the training, realizing he pushed past his limits. The three rush in to finish him off, no mercy. Then the MC just smiles because another rift appears where he was. They're impressed, seeing how much he's evolved while they fight. Explosions start popping off everywhere. Leo tells us 10 minutes have already passed, while Ri says she's never seen those three so happy. After 32 minutes, Arata collapses on the ground, completely drained. The three watch him with admiration, saying that was insanely fun. He raises his fist, happy about his win. Like an older sister, Xian warns him not to get cocky and to never let his guard down. When Femboy looks over Arata's shoulder, something was there. The creature jumps into the air, letting out this animal-like scream. The little creature walks up to Arata and starts cuddling up to him. Everyone's wondering what the hell his ability did this time. A while later at the research institute, Maki examines the newborn creature and explains that it was leftover residue from before. The boy says it weirdly makes him feel calm. The scientist comments that since it was just born, he should give her a name. The boy thinks for a moment and looks at the little thing, and decides to call her Piggy, since that's all she knew how to yell. After saying goodbye to Maki, Ray suggests a place to go. She drags them to a barbecue again. Arata wonders why everyone's there. Leo explains they were celebrating, and that they also needed to decide something important. Xian tells him to get lost while he starts juggling. Taking the chance, she steps closer and asks if he wouldn't rather stay with Big Sis in the rift. Ray cuts in, pulls her away from him, and says she's way past the age to be calling herself Big Sis. Xian fires back, reminding her Ray was clinging to the kid in public. Leo notices the sparks between them are real, and tells them to knock it off. Dogami finishes his drink, slams it on the table and gets everyone's attention. He says that if an S-class demon rift shows up, they need to decide who's going. Because of protocol and because of Arata's abilities, only one person should go with him. Femboy, with a dangerous look, says Arata has to choose who it'll be. Meanwhile, Ichika steals Arata's food. Xian, with a flirty look, says Big Sis would protect him. Leo reminds everyone he was the first one to fight alongside him, and Femboy says he was the first to see Arata's potential. Dogami says he wouldn't mind going into a rift that huge. Ryan closes her eyes and says she already knows what Arata's answer will be. Everyone stares at Arata, making him uncomfortable. He takes a deep breath and says he gets it, and that he'll choose. Cut to everyone outside the restaurant saying goodbye. Arata says he felt like part of the executors and thanks Rai for inviting him. She says everyone was curious about him and that's just how it is. He says he was happy that it felt like being part of a family. For a long time his brother was his only ally and now he wants to get even stronger to protect the people who matter to him. Ray is touched by what he says, then Arata asks if that isn't the opposite direction from her house. The master gets embarrassed, admitting she's terrible with directions. They laugh and head off in different directions. After Arata passed the test, everyone waited for an S-class rift to appear. Each of them went back to their daily routine, but a sinister shadow was moving through the depths of the association. In the prison, Goto stares at a mysterious being that came out of a rift. When it steps closer, he's terrified as he recognizes that face. Months pass, a woman announces an S-class rift has been detected in Shintani Block 6. Dogame calls Arata, saying the day has finally come and he's counting on him. Near the rift, someone walks up to the boy and says so it finally showed up, and tells him to make damn sure he doesn't die in there. That's when we realize Femboy was chosen as his attack partner. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.